This week is a big one in Westminster, with important votes on the EU Withdrawal Bill. There are a number of House of Lords amendments to the bill, which seek to mitigate the negative impacts of Brexit and are being considered by the House of Commons. Lords' amendments to be debated on Tuesday include those to restrict the government's use of so-called Henry VIII powers, to ensure the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland is respected, to remove the fixed exit date of the 29th of March 2019, and, most importantly, to further ensure Parliament has a meaningful vote on the Brexit deal this autumn. On Wednesday we will deal with vital amendments that seek to ensure the UK continues to participate in the EU Customs Union and the European Economic Area, EEA, among other things. In this backbenchers Parliament, as it has been dubbed by my colleague Hilary Benn, chair of the Commons Brexit Select Committee, much of the agenda is being driven, as the name implies, on the backbenches. On the hard right, the Tory European Research Group, ERG, chaired by Jacob Rees-Mogg and supported in Cabinet by the likes of Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, Environment Secretary Michael Gove, and Trade Secretary Liam Fox, is driving demands for an extreme break in our relationship with the EU. A very small number of Labour MPs subscribe to this view too. On the other side, a cross-party coalition is fighting against a hard Brexit, or Brexit altogether, under the All-Party Parliamentary Group on EU Relations, a group which I co-chair with Anna Soubry. Its vice-chairs include Green Party co-leader Caroline Lucas, Liberal Democrat Deputy Leader Jo Swinson, SNP. Brexit spokesman Stephen Gethins and Plaid Cymru's Jonathan Edwards. Leading figures in the Conservative Group for Europe like Ken Clarke and Dominic Grieve, and in the Labour campaign for the single market like Alison McGovern and Ian Murray, are all supporters and part of the UP2. Following her disastrous general election campaign last year, when the Prime Minister put the ERG's vision of Brexit at the heart of the Tory campaign and consequently lost her majority, her approach to Brexit has been driven by what is necessary to keep her in number 10 as Conservative leader and PM. Gordon Brown, Theresa May could be forced out if she loses key Brexit vote. May clearly believes that the ERG members are much more likely than the Tory sensibles to submit those 48 letters from MPs necessary to demand a leadership contest if she turns her back on the hard Brexit they want. This is why, in spite of there being majority support in the Commons for the UK to stay in the Customs Union and EEA, she will not agree to it. Unless and until sensible Tory MPs consistently exercise an opposite pressure, the ERG view of the world will win out. They can do this in a less aggressive manner than the ERG, not by threatening to submit 48 letters of their own but by sticking to their guns and voting for the 15 cross-party Lords amendments voted for by former Conservative ministers in the Lords such as Chris Patten, Michael Heseltine, Ros Altman, Sandeep Verma and others. As Ken Clarke put it yesterday, sensible Tories need to rescue the Prime Minister from this terrible treatment she is getting from key members of her cabinet. If a majority of MPs vote for the Lords' amendments softening Brexit, it will vividly illustrate that the ERG's vision of Brexit is impossible because the Commons won't support it. That will strengthen Theresa May's hand in forcing the ERG to face reality. A number of factors play on Conservative MPs, not least aggressive local associations undergoing increasing entryism from former UKIP members, vile abuse and aggression stoked by some of the Brexit-supporting media, and death threats. Last week a UKIP supporter was given a 9-week suspended jail term for sending threatening emails to Dominic Grieve, Anna Soubry, Nicky Morgan, and Heidi Allen, in addition to racist material to Labour MPs David Lammy and Eleanor Smith. This is the tip of the iceberg. We know there are MPs this week who will vote against their instincts and what they believe to be right for the country because of the intimidation and threats they face. These threats, as Parliament considers the biggest issue facing us since the Second World War, are a real and present danger to our democracy. Ironically enough, the Brexiteer right will demand party loyalty from their fellow MPs this week when they are serial rebels themselves. Former Tory leader, Ian Duncan Smith, who was urging Tory MPs to vote with the whip yesterday, has himself rebelled 70 times under 4 Conservative leaders. Rees-Mogg has rebelled 80 times and Brexit Secretary David Davis has rebelled 90 times. Meanwhile, Boris told a gathering of Tory activists last week that Donald Trump would do a better job than their current leader in negotiating Brexit. These people are in no position to lecture. On the Labour side, I'm delighted our front bench are supporting almost all the Lord's amendments. There is understandable frustration that no Tory MP will support any opposition front-bench-initiated amendments to this bill, which is why it makes sense to back the cross-party ones sent back to the Commons by the Lords. The one tricky area has been whether Labour should support the Lords' amendment seeking to ensure the UK continues to participate in the single market through the EA like Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. There has been no hiding it, while a majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party support the EA in principle, a minority are still to be convinced beyond the usual Labour levers. Their concerns shouldn't be dismissed but engaged with, as I have sought to do since the 2016 referendum. The EA is an imperfect solution. The perfect solution would be not to leave the EU at all, which is my position. But, short of that, being in the EA does enable non-EU countries to enjoy the economic benefits of EU membership to the fullest extent outside of the EU and to continue to be part of its framework of cross-border rules protecting employee rights, consumers and the environment. This is the least worst option in the event of Brexit. Play was suspended during the match between Lancashire and Essex as an air ambulance landed on the pitch after one of the spectators was taken ill on day 3 of the Specsavers County Championship, Division 1 match at Emirates Old Trafford, Manchester. Marchers hold up banners as they gather to mark 100 years since women won the right to vote in the UK. The parade makes its way up the Mall from Horse Guards Parade to Buckingham Palace, central London, following the Trooping the Colour ceremony, as the Queen celebrates her official birthday. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau meets with British Prime Minister Theresa May at the G7 Leaders Summit in La Molbert, Quebec. Brexit Secretary David Davis, right, and International Trade Secretary Liam Fox leave 10 Downing Street. Prime Minister Theresa May held an emergency Brexit cabinet meeting in an attempt to resolve tensions over the UK's Irish border plan. Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May welcomes Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Downing Street. British fashion designer and environmental campaigner, Dame Vivienne Westwood delivers an anti-fracking letter to 10 Downing Street in London. New images issued by the Grenfell Tower inquiry of the kitchen in Flat 16 where the fire started on June 14 last year. 71 people were killed after the fire tore through the housing block in Kensington. Bishop of Southwark Christopher Chesson and members of the public attend a commemoration service on the first anniversary of the London Bridge terror attack. Britain held a national minute of silence on June 3, 1 year on from the London Bridge terror attack that killed 8 people and injured dozens more. William Buick ridding Massa celebrates crossing the line and winning the Investec Derby race on Derby Day at Epsom Downs. Traffic passes anti-Brexit signs on the County Derry/Londonderry, Northern Ireland and County Donegal in the Irish Republic. Northern Ireland could be given joint EU and UK status and a buffer zone on its border with the Republic, under new plans being drawn up by David Davis, according to reports. Eleanor Crossy-Malone displays an abortion pill packet after taking a pill as abortion rights campaign group Rosa, Reproductive Rights Against Oppression, Sexism and Austerity distribute abortion pills from a touring bus in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Flouting Northern Irish governmental laws which forbid the use of abortion pills, the group are also protesting outside offices belonging to the main political parties in the province. Women in Northern Ireland have been prosecuted for buying abortion pills over the internet, and it is illegal for a woman to have an abortion unless in special circumstances, unlike the rest of the United Kingdom. The Republic of Ireland voted in favour of pro-choice last week in a referendum. West Midlands police officers carrying out scene searches near to where a 15-year-old boy was fatally stabbed in Wolverhampton. A view at Westminster Abbey from the medieval Triforium that is hosting an exhibition in London. The Queen's Diamond Jubilee Galleries, set more than 16 metres, 52 feet, above the Abbey floor in the medieval Triforium, will open to the public for the first time on June 11, displaying over 300 treasures from the Abbey's collection which will tell the rich 1,000-year history of the institution at Westminster Abbey. People enjoy the hot weather on Bournemouth Beach during Bank Holiday Monday in Dorset. Chris Ashton of the Barbarians scores against England at Twickenham. Lightning strikes over the City of London. Rory McIlroy took the clubhouse lead into round 3 of the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth. Alistair Cook batting against Pakistan during the first Test match of the summer at Lord's Cricket Ground, London. Home Secretary Sajid Javid speaking at the annual conference of the Police Federation of England and Wales at the International Convention Centre in Birmingham. Felix, too, sits next to messages and flowers left in Manchester, ahead of the Manchester Arena National Service of Commemoration at Manchester Cathedral to mark 1 year since the Manchester attack. Marcio and Andrea Gomez, parents of Logan Gomez, arrived for a commemoration hearing at the opening of the inquiry into the Grenfell Tower disaster, in London. Brackley Town celebrate after winning the Build-based FA Trophy final after they beat Bromley on penalties at Wembley Stadium. Actress Meghan Markle reaches Prince Harry at the altar in St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle for their wedding service. Workers from the Covent Garden branch of TGI Fridays on the picket line outside the restaurant as they strike in a dispute over pay. Members of Unite are taking action on Friday in a row over tips and payment of the minimum wage. A police officer talks to a homeless man in Windsor ahead of the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Wing Commander John Butcher, commanding officer of 617th Squadron, left, jokes with Britain's last surviving dam buster, squadron leader George John E. Johnson, during an event to mark the 75th anniversary of the dam busters' raids, at RAF Coningsby. The Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight was hoping to fly one of the two remaining Avro Lancaster bombers over the Derwent and Lady Bower reservoirs, but high winds prevented the aircraft from taking off. 2018 marks the 100th anniversary of the formation of the RAF and the 75th anniversary of the 617th Squadron Dam Busters operation. The Dam Buster Raids, Operation Chastise, was an attack on German dams on 17 May 1943 by Royal Air Force No. 617th Squadron, using an innovative bouncing bomb, which skimmed on the surface of the reservoir before hitting the dam wall and exploding. President of Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan speaks as British Prime Minister Theresa May listens during a press conference after their meeting at 10 Downing Street. Erdogan is in the UK for a 3-day visit, which includes a closing lecture at the Tat Lidl Forum in Oxford, an audience with the Queen and talks with Theresa May. The funeral cortege of Alfie Evans goes past Everton's Goodison Park ground in Liverpool. Doctors at Alder Hey Children's Hospital in Liverpool stopped providing life support treatment to Alfie last month after his parents, Tom Evans and Kate James, lost 2 rounds of fights in the High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court and European Court of Human Rights. Daisy May Cooper, the winner of the Female in a Comedy Award for this country, with her BAFTA. Thousands of union members marched through central London demanding a new deal for workers, in an event organised by the Trades Union Congress, TUC. Jeremy Corbyn with shipbuilding apprentices at the Fairfield Shipbuilding Museum in Govan. During a speech he called for Navy shipbuilding contracts to stay in the UK. Dominic Chilcott, right, British ambassador in Turkey, hands over a letter of apology from the UK government to Libyan dissident Abdul Hakim Belaj, at the British consulate, in Istanbul. Abdul Hakim Belaj and his wife, Fatima Boudka, allege they were detained in Southeast Asia in 2004 and sent to Libya to be interrogated by the regime of late dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Britain acknowledged Thursday that its intelligence agents played a role in the kidnapping and torture of an opponent of the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, a rare admission of wrongdoing by British spies. The coffin of former House of Commons Speaker Lord Michael Martin, followed by his widow Mary, is carried from St Aloysius in Glasgow after his funeral. The former Labour MP died on Sunday, April 29, after a short illness at the age of 72. Mayor of London Sadiq Khan and Labour MP Heidi Alexander. Ms Alexander is standing down from Parliament after being confirmed as London's Deputy Mayor for Transport, replacing current Deputy Mayor Val Shawcross. Arsene Wenger bids farewell to Arsenal Football Club and the stadium he helped to build in more ways than one. It was Wenger's final home game of after 22 years in charge. Arsenal sent him off with a 5-0 victory over Burnley. Manchester City celebrate with the trophy after winning the Premier League title. Anti-independence supporters wave Union Jack flags as thousands of demonstrators march in support of Scottish independence through the streets of Glasgow. Prime Minister Theresa May with her supporters during a visit to Wandsworth Town Hall, where the Conservative Party retained control of Wandsworth Council in the local elections. Jeremy Corbyn outside a polling station in Islington after voting in the local elections. A memorial to George Michael outside his house in Highgate, North London. George Michael's family have since asked fans to remove their tributes from outside the late singer's former homes for the sake of his neighbours. Lester Morrisman during May Day celebrations at Bradgate Park in Newtown, Linford, Leicestershire. Sajid Javid outside the Home Office in Westminster after he was appointed as the new Home Secretary. Celtic celebrate after winning. They confirmed winning the Scottish Premiership by beating rivals Rangers 5-0 at Celtic Park. People release balloons outside Alderhay Children's Hospital in Liverpool, following the death on Saturday morning of Alfie Evans, who was being treated at the hospital. The 23-month-old died at 2:30 a.m., parents Kate James and Thomas Evans said on Facebook. The youngster was at the center of a legal battle over his treatment that touched hearts around the world. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, right, speaks with British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, left, and Belgian Foreign Minister Didier Reynders, centre, during a meeting of the North Atlantic Council at NATO headquarters in Brussels. NATO held its last major meeting in its old headquarters, with talks focused on strained ties with Russia, a fresh peace effort in Afghanistan and a new training mission for Iraq. A protester wearing a mask depicting Facebook's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, flanked by two protesters wearing angry emoji masks, protest outside Portcullis House in central London. Facebook's CTO Mike Schroepfer appeared in front of British members of Parliament on the Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee in the wake of allegations that information on millions of its users was misused. Members of the military work in the Maltings shopping area, close to the bench where Russian former double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia were found critically ill 7 weeks ago. The area around the bench where the couple collapsed is one of 9 sites to be cleaned in an operation that is likely to take several months. A statue in honor of the first female suffragette Millicent Fawcett is unveiled as Prime Minister Theresa May and Mayor of London Sadiq Khan look on during a ceremony in Parliament Square. The statue of women's suffrage leader Millicent Fawcett is the first monument of a woman and the first designed by a woman, Turner Prize-winning artist Gillian Waring OBE, to take a place in Parliament Square. Prince William arrives at the Lindo wing of St Mary's Hospital with his children Prince George and Princess Charlotte after his wife Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, gave birth to a son. Some Labour MPs object to the EA because it requires its member states to continue free movement. However, as the former Labour Prime Minister Gordon Brown set out last week, you can restrict the way the principle of free movement operates to better manage EU migration. He put forward a 6-point package of reforms, including preventing the undercutting of wages, all of which can be implemented now, while we are part of the EA by dint of our EU membership. Interestingly, new polling conducted by Opinion shows Labour voters favour staying in the single market after Brexit by a ratio of almost 3-1. A clear majority of Labour voters in every single region of the country, including those who voted Leave, support such a relationship with the EU if Brexit happens. This is perhaps unsurprising, given the government's economic impact assessments which have forecast that Brexit voting regions will be hit the hardest if we leave the single market. Others say that if we adopted the EA, we would go from being rule makers to rule takers. In other words, we'd have rules imposed on us after Brexit by the EU without any control over what those rules actually are. The truth is a little different. EA members are rule shapers. the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has helpfully produced a paper setting out in detail how they shape the rules of the EA. Norway sits on the committees that draw up the EA rules, and they observed that it is easier to influence the substance of a proposal when it is being developed by the European Commission than when it has already become the subject of negotiations in the Council of the EU and the European Parliament. Whatever happens this week, MPs should do what in their judgment is in the best interests of their constituents and the country. We will never be forgiven by the younger generations, who will have to live with the consequences of whatever happens for longer than anyone else, if we put party or personal interests before what is best for our nation. Is Love Island feminist or fair? I make no bones about being an addict of the TV show Love Island, which returned to our screens last week. It is gripping for all kinds of reasons I shan't go into, and it's great TV after a long day at work when all you want to do is switch off and chill out. I confessed about being fan to a female friend of mine over the weekend. She told me she refuses to watch it as she believes it promotes all the worst stereotypes of women. You could argue that it doesn't do much for certain stereotypes of men either. Ultimately, however, it seems to me that despite all the hype around the way people look on the show, the couple who win can't do so on looks alone. If you don't have a personality your fellow housemates warm to, surviving a recoupling, where you get chucked out if no one wants to couple up with you, is a much harder task. If, notwithstanding what I say, your looks do carry you through the recouplings to the final stages, the public is likely to vote out an uninteresting or unkind person eventually. It's brutal, but is it fair? Who knows? But I'm going to keep watching, 100%. Chuka Umanu is the Labour MP for Streatham.